Taylor Swift. Harvard course. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Will Pavia writes in the Times, "Why I'm teaching a Harvard course about Taylor Swift. The world's biggest pop star is firmly in the tradition of English romantic poets, according to the scholar who signed up 300 students to her course." One of William Wordsworth's most famous poems is Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey on revisiting the banks of the Wye during a tour, July 13th, 1798. By tour, he did not mean that he went from stadium to stadium, like Taylor Swift, trailed by an enormous entourage of road managers and support acts, playing to delirious crowds. Oh, really? No shit. I thought that's what regularly happened at the end of the 18th century, that people, the various romantic poets, turned up with a microphone at Wembley Arena going, "Good evening, London! And now I wandered, lonely as a cloud. Rah!" says the crowd. Thanks for pointing that out. Apparently, it's confirmed that he meant a walking tour with his sister of the Welsh borders. Yet in other respects, Swift and Wordsworth have a lot in common, according to Stephanie Burt, an English professor who is preparing to teach a course at Harvard on the pop star and her work. News of the course has prompted a chorus of complaints from critics who cite it as further evidence that America's most prestigious university has lost its way, and that the foundations of academia and perhaps society itself are crumbling. Burt, who agreed to speak about the class by email, offered a stout defense of teaching the pop star and her music alongside Wordsworth, Byron, and John Donne. Back to December, a Swift song, and Tintern Abbey both describe looking back at your mistakes and wondering if you're the same person who made them, and wishing you might not be, and then looking around at the seasons and at nature, she said. Swift's 2010 track addresses a former lover and includes the line, "It turns out freedom ain't nothing but missing you." Wordsworth admittedly pours his heart out to a river, "O sylvan Wye, thou wanderer through the woods," and to his sister, "In thy voice I catch the language of my former heart," rather than to an old flame. But there is, perhaps, a similar description of the emptiness of freedom. "I bounded o'er the mountains, more like a man, flying from something that he dreads than one who sought the thing he loves." Burt, a poet herself and an influential literary critic, as well as a committed Swiftie, will next term come before the 300 students who have signed up for her course, Taylor Swift and Her World, armed with many other examples of how the pop star stands in the tradition of the English Romantics. Never Grow Up, a song Swift has said she wrote in her late teens after a friend made her the godmother of her newborn child, describes the same feeling that Wordsworth examines in Intimations of Immortality. Burt said, "I don't mean that Taylor has read a lot of Wordsworth, though I'm pretty sure she's read some." Burt says that Swift's song, The Lakes, provides the most obvious clue. The track is from Swift's pandemic-era album Folklore, recorded in England, while she was wandering lonely as a cloud by Lake Windermere. There are no daffodils, but she does sing that a red rose grew up out of ice-frozen ground, with no one around to tweet it, while I bathe in cliffside pools. There's also a chorus that goes, "Take me to the lakes where all the poets went to die. Those Windermere peaks look like a perfect place to cry." And in two lines that some took as a reference to her long-running hostilities with the rapper Kanye West, she sings, "I've come too far to watch some name-dropping sleaze. Tell me what my word's worth." Boo-boom, Wordsworth. That, of course, is the assertion of control indirectly over Kanye West, if the interpretation is correct. Then there is Lord Byron, the celebrity poet who was forever mining his love life for fresh material for his verse. Burt said Byron did not name his poems Me or Reputation, referring to two Swift titles, but a perhaps surprising number of Byron's short poems could be given them, she said. The thematic and emotional overlap between Taylor and the first generation of Romantics, in particular, can tell us something about both groups of works, she added. Do I see the same connections to Keats? I do not, but I wish I did. Burt is by no means the first American academic to venture into Swift studies. At least 5 other universities have placed the pop star on the syllabus, starting with New York University, where a writer from Rolling Stone offered a class on her career, songwriting and musical influences. Swift, for her part, spoke at a ceremony for NYU students about to graduate and received an honorary doctorate. Last year I was in a stadium this size. I was dancing in heels and wearing a glittery leotard, she said, dressed in a cap and gown. This outfit is much more comfortable. But the Harvard professor's course may be the most high-minded offering to date in bringing Swift onto the English syllabus. Asked whether Bob Dylan's Nobel Prize in Literature made it simpler to make the case that Swift's songs were literary works, Burt said, probably, although it also further blurred the distinction between songwriting, what Dylan and Swift do so well, and the writing of page-based written down doesn't need any music behind it poetry. Those arts are related, but they're not the same, she said. She described Swift as an artist who has been admirably attentive to how the culture has changed around her. Sometimes she is reacting to her own earlier songs, Burt said, before adding, Seamus, he needed that a lot too. At Harvard, we teach other major artists, whom we now see as great, even though in their day they were low prestige, Burt said. Samuel Richardson, Charles Dickens, George Cukor. If you want people to read The Great Dead, you have to connect them to things people already like, and to do that in a sincere and serious way. I could teach a course entirely on John Donne, but if I put John Donne in a Taylor Swift course, that's 10 times as many readers for him, and I doubt Donne would mind. Now, leaving aside the methodology that this academic is utilising, and whether you think that it's appropriate for a university such as Harvard to run a course on Taylor Swift, what would this mean? Well, first of all, it would be interesting to see if the academic has picked up on the narcissism of the subject matter, namely the author and writer of these songs, and whether she's picked up on it in some of those songs, as I've explained, for instance, when I dissected Anti-Hero and made reference also to the lyrics that are used in Blank Space. So far, it doesn't appear to have been the case, but we've only been given a very superficial glimpse at what she's talking about in relation to this course. Somehow I doubt, however, that this academic will do so, mainly because she's a fan of Swift, and in the circumstances I don't think that she would necessarily pick up on both Swift's narcissism and the way that she uses her songwriting as a means of the pursuit of the prime aims. What would all of this mean to Taylor Swift? Naturally, the fact that a course has been developed about her work and has been done so in a favourable fashion is positive fuel for her. The fact that people will be studying it, talking about her, analysing her works, and presumably doing in a constructive critical fashion is all the provision of positive fuel from tertiary sources. The criticism of the course being utilised by Harvard, of course, is challenge fuel, and she would not like that, but she simply dismiss it as the rumblings of envious individuals. But for her, the existence of the course is a feather in her cap. It provides a means for her to triangulate other people with that course for the pursuit of the prime aims. And she'll be delighted with the fact that Harvard, being such a prestigious university, would want to run a course on her, and the fact, of course, she recognises that it's being done by somebody who is pro-Swift. All good news for Taylor Swift. All more of her continued march, hoovering up individuals and sucking in their fuel. And she knows precisely what she's doing as she continues this onward march to control and manage individuals. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.